Good afternoon. I'm Randy Horton from Orthogonal. Welcome to our webinar today on lessons from 2025, plans for 2026. As many of you know, we do these webinars monthly or so to really bring together industry experts from medical device manufacturers, other product and service firms, technology companies to reflect on important issues in our industry and share knowledge. Our guests today, three guests today, are no exception. I'll introduce them shortly. Two quick things before we get going. First, we really value your brutally candid feedback on this. We're always looking to do better on our webinars, to have better topics, to cover topics that you're not hearing elsewhere and would like to be heard. So please give us feedback. You're welcome to reach out to us. And if we reach out to you, please pick up the phone or answer the email. We'd certainly appreciate it. It's really the best way we can get better is by listening to all of you. Second, and very briefly, we don't like to make these advertisements for orthogonal, but people have told us it's kind of weird if they come to a webinar, leave, and they have no idea who hosted it. So I'll give you a basic overview of us and why we're doing this webinar. We got into this business to improve patient outcomes faster. The way we do it is by helping companies building software as a medical device and connected device systems accelerate their development of those software by 2 to 3x and up. And the way we accomplish that is by taking the best of modern product management and software engineering tools and techniques, really from the tech industry and other industries, and have found ways to apply them to MedTech in a way that's really respectful and conscious of MedTech's core missions around safety and effectiveness so that we can move faster and cheaper and more user-centered and do more complicated features and deliver better devices, but simultaneously raise the bar on safety and effectiveness at the same time. And that's really what we're all about. We work with companies from Series A startups like Venks or Venk, I guess you're beyond Series A startup now, but companies at that stage, all the way through middle market companies like a Tandem Diabetes Care or Quidel up to the Medtronics and the J&Js of the world. We also work with some pharma companies, consumer tech companies like Google, Aura, and Bose as well. So if you have any questions, call us. The reason we do these webinars is because, look, this is a challenging industry as is. 2025 has certainly been no exception. I'll leave it to the panelists to talk about if 2025 has been crazier than any other year. But there's a lot to keep up with. And so we really wanted to take a moment at the end of 2025 to reflect on what's happened, what we've learned, talk about what happened that was anticipated, what happened that wasn't anticipated, and most importantly, talk about how we're going to apply these lessons next year. What can we use of intel from this to make better strategic decisions to drive our own path that we set in supposed to being reactive and subject to the whims of 2026. So with all of that, I will first ask each of our panelists, three panelists, to introduce themselves. Maybe tell us about yourself, a little bit of your career history, your company and what you do, and basically what you did was so unlucky that it landed you on this panel. So I'll start with Mike.
Thanks, Randy. So Mike Alvarez, I'm the CEO of Gluco. Gluco is a global diabetes software as a medical device company. We've been around for about 13 years. What we do is we aggregate data from all the complex diabetes devices that are out there. There's about a little over 200 devices that send data. Some of it send it up to the cloud. Some need a cable to transmit. We do it all. And what's interesting about diabetes as a condition is when your doctor says you have diabetes, we want you to start measuring your glucose levels. A lot of times it's up to you what you want to get. You know, they may recommend something, but they have a lot of choice, which creates what I call a little bit of a Tower of Babel of information. What we do is we collect all that data onto one platform using the cloud, put it up into the Epic system or whatever EHR system that company or the enterprise has, and just make the ability to manage a really chronic disease a little bit easier for the healthcare professional as well as for the patient. So we're in 35 countries, 10,000 clinics, about 4 million patients and counting. Growing, diabetes in general has a lot of tailwinds associated with it, so we're growing pretty robustly. Have employees in all those countries around the world, which presents challenges. We have regulatory in all those countries around the world, which presents challenges. But we're based out of Boston. We have about half of our sales in the US, half of it in the EU. I've been in MedTech for about 30 years. Worked at some of the big guys, Abbott, Medtronic, and have been, in the startup world for about the last 6 years. This is my second startup, although Gluco is not really a startup; they're more of a scale up at this point. And what got me so unlucky to be here was, I had a great time at LSX talking to Randy and accepted his invite to come back. So be careful who you befriend, I guess is my
Welcome back,
caution.
Mike. We're thrilled to have you. Venk, who I'll introduce as a longtime friend of Orthogonal, as well as I call Venk the most interesting man in MedTech.
Thank you, Randy. Sorry for being muted there, and thanks to the orthogonal audience for tuning in. Venk Vardhan, co-founder and CEO of Nanoware, early stage startup, Series B stage, based out of New York. We're a home health platform for digital diagnostics that offers self-administered cardiometabolic assessments at home. So we do that by our proprietary wearable, which has our own proprietary cloth nanotechnology sensors, is the first and only textile-based sensors in the world that have been 510(k) cleared by FDA for capture and transmission of essential performance biomarkers. We put those sensors in a multimodal wearable, which replaces continuous and time synchronous stethoscope functionality, Holter monitor functionality, respiration, lung volume, hemodynamic, and actigraphy functionality. And then through that time synchronicity of those raw signals every millisecond, we do a lot of time correlative algorithmic work. And our most recent 510(k) clearance is for a software as a medical device algorithm that combines these metrics for continuous and cuffless blood pressure estimates and a hypertension diagnostic across all four classes of hypertension. To date, I think we're still the only company in the world that has that software as a medical device clearance. We deliver a systolic and diastolic blood pressure value every 60 seconds. And I believe we're the only company labeled to be able to track changes in blood pressure of greater than or equal to 15 millimeters of mercury. As we all know, a blood pressure value, for example, is a point solution typically taken on a 30-second interval. But throughout our day and throughout our night, our blood pressure sort of goes all over the place. So continuous and passive cardiometabolic monitoring is what we stay focused on. We do that we get the metabolic function of cardiometabolics through partnerships with the leading CGM or continuous glucose monitoring companies, where their data will go time synchronously alongside all of our cardiopulmonary metrics. And then we also have a partnership with a great startup, Satio, that is a self-administered wearable blood draw patch. So we get HbA1c and lipid profile information from them. They are earlier stage, but expecting their first 510(k) here in short order. So we are just crossing our decade of existence. So while we're still early and recently commercial, we've been at this sort of fairly complicated tech stack for the better part of 10 years. As Randy mentioned, we first got started in our journey on creating our digital platform end-to-end, from the mobile back-end ingestion, server-based analytics, and then front-end delivery, and working with Orthogonal in our first year or two of the company. We've since taken all of that know-how internally and manage all of our software and AI internally at this point. But Randy and Bernhard have been great friends of the company, and that's why we're here, and we continue to come back as they invite us.
And Randy, now you're on mute.
There we go. Bernhard, welcome. How did you end up here?
Well, I founded the company, so I have been, I guess, a digital native in software for about 30 years, and working all kinds of different industries. But about, I want to say, 15 years ago, found my way into the medtech space, which I found really interesting in that a lot of what we were doing outside of the device industry was there were big barriers to using those things, and to doing what really worked. And so that started my journey. Why is that? Learned a whole bunch about it. And how do we actually bring best practices in and evolve new best practices to not just improve patient outcomes, but improve them faster? So that's really been, our journey and our mission. And, so we've been building software as a medical device and connected device ecosystems for a while. And we keep learning new things. The last couple of years have been pretty exciting with, more momentum around digital ecosystems for companies, which I think we'll get into in a little bit. And also just, more use of AI in the work that we are doing and sort of the continuation of all of that. So, while it's been an interesting last year, I think, and certainly with challenges, I keep seeing, trends that are pointing in the direction where we can really fulfill our mission to really do more with digital ecosystems.
Terrific. Well, we're great lineup for today. For the audience, we'll have things sort of wrapped up on a core discussion by about 10 minutes to the next hour, so 10 to 1 Eastern. But we can stay longer if there's more questions. Happy to continue it. We've gotten questions in advance. We'll field them here. The goal is for this to really be more of a dynamic conversation and not a pre-scripted event, particularly on a topic like this, which is somewhat less structured. Also, I'll share a quick teaser. If you stay on to the end, we have a tradition we started this year. Every webinar has a jingle. It's generated by a generative AI tool that writes songs for you. You tell it the style, you tell it the lyrics. And it definitely expresses to me that humans are not going anywhere soon because they're really bad. I mean, they're so bad, they're good. They're fun is the best way I can describe it, like late night TV. But also the tool changes pretty much every month. So this month, when I went to write a jingle, I asked it to do it in the style of Old Lang Syne, the New Year song, since we're doing a wrap up one. And this time it actually gave me the option to write my own lyrics. And it said, write lyrics or a prompt. I said, no, I'll just give you the prompt. Well, my lyrics are the prompt. So I'll just play a second of that for you, most for entertainment, but we'll play the full thing later. I believe we're doing an album of bad webinar jingles this year. We're not kidding. We actually are going to do this. But here we go.
Webinar jingle hosted by Orthogonal, feature Bank, Mike Bernhard and Randy. Title Lessons from 2020.
All right. That's enough for now, but it'll give you a taste of what happens when your prompt is the song lyric. And with that, let me throw it out to all of you. I guess, Mike, we'll have you start 2025. Any crazier in digital medtech than any other year, or no? What'd you gather this year?
No, it was the best of years. It was the worst of years. You could start there, right? So the news is we ended the year above our AOP, which is always good. We ended the year profitable, which is always good. But there were so many bumps along the road that we didn't anticipate when we put those AOP numbers together. The stuff that came out of the FDA was really kind of rattled our investors, our board. We went through an acquisition process that people started to wonder, hey, this is a FDA Class 2 product. Are we getting into a quagmire dealing with this new FDA environment? We ended up finding out that after all the crazy Doge stuff settled down, things are getting back to somewhat normal. I think that part of it was good. Some interesting challenges in Europe. Europe continues to be for a company like ours, where half of our revenue comes out of Europe, it's different. It became a little harder to do business in Europe this year from a regulatory point of view. I think that we're very lucky to be in a space that has a lot of tailwinds. So diabetes in general is just, especially type 2 is exploding. Type 1 is a genetic, constant. So companies like us that are ahead of the curve, we're lucky that we're riding that wave. But in general, I would say, at the end of the day, I've been doing this for over 30 years. At the end of the day, I've never, how you end the year always seems to end where you thought you were going to end, but how you got there never is the way you thought you were going to get there. So this year was no different. Luckily, we ended up where we thought we were going to end up, but the path was not a straight line. There were a lot of curves along the way, and that's our jobs as leaders of companies, is to adapt to the changes that come along the way, and you hopefully have a good team that you've built that helps you with those tough problems. And I think this year was no different. So
Excellent. Bank, did this year go exactly as planned?
I wish in 9 years I could say that no matter how it was planned, we always reach where I thought we would at the end of the year. I think we have yet to do that, Mike. So I'll let you know when we reach there. I think as you become a little bit more mature, and I say that relatively as a company that just recently went commercial, as Mike said, you can do your best to plan, and then everything that I think you can keep under your control, which is very little in a regulated environment, as well as moving into commercial, where there's aspects of reimbursement and different payment models for digital companies, that there really wasn't decades of precedent on how we would establish, companies like Gluco and Nanoware would establish payment. And then, of course, you've got a new administration that, as Mike mentioned, even for a startup like us, kind of forced us all to become trade experts almost overnight, and learn everything about tariffs that would be imaginable, when we're only US FDA cleared. We only sell in the US, but obviously there's a wearable component to ours, and trying to understand if we had majority component manufacturing as USMCA and being exempt, and then what the labor constitution of that was, as many of us get some of our raw materials and stuff from overseas. So that obviously, I think, put some delay and some uncertainty into the market, particularly for early stage investors. Where I think we ended up in the year is a pretty exciting place, and a place we probably couldn't have planned. I think when in the last 3 or 4 years, when markets have been choppy, particularly in our sector and for early stage investment, just given the ZERP era post the pandemic, and before interest rates kind of moved from a non-zero state, or from a zero-based state. I think we ended the year on a much more positive note. I think things are looking good for next year, knock on wood, without jinxing it. But looks like we're going to get potentially another interest rate cut moving into next year. And while venture capital is still probably staying a little bit more opportunistic and focused, just given they're triaging their portfolios from 3-4 years ago, I think there is going to be a lot of strategic movement in the space next year of digital health. And obviously there's some great, while the new administration obviously put some uncertainty in how we manage our business in the beginning of the year, I think there have been some very recently positive announcements, particularly for digital health, that the administration has announced just in the last few weeks. We're happy to say that us, and I'm sure Mike and Gluco and many other companies, have been working very closely with this administration that is seeking a lot of industry feedback on how to reduce costs, how to decentralize care, how to use a lot more data-driven insights and wearables for better healthcare outcomes, more preventative care and early diagnosis, as opposed to waiting till people get sick. So some new programs like the Access and Tempo program were pretty exciting. And I think that will also lead to some good strategic activity in our space in 2026 going forward.
Yeah, it just before I get into mine, the tempo one is very interesting. Some of what was said around tempo, in particular, some of the examples that we're looking at, they also mentioned pre-diabetes, right? Which is something that the FDA has historically said not a disease state. We're not dealing with that, but it was specifically mentioned in a lot of the announcements dealing more with pre-diabetes, right? And if we're thinking about changing the cost curve, well, there is certainly a lot of thinking about dealing with things earlier and keeping people healthier, which makes a ton of sense as a way of bending the cost curve. So I think that's good thinking there, and I'm eager to see what that ends up meaning in practice in 2026. I think that's one of the things with things like pilots historically from FDA that have been, I think, there have been lots of pilots, and a lot of them have not really sort of gone that far for various reasons. But in this case, I really do like the fact that this is a strong collaboration between FDA and CMS, and there's some movement there with CMS that I think is, it speaks to very positive things, and fits in with sort of the home as center as well. So I see that as a good trend. The proof is in the pudding. What does that really mean in 26 and 27? I, I remain optimistic. Otherwise, I would not be in this industry. Um, uh, anyway, just a comment on that. I think what we've seen, right, is I was certainly worried at the beginning of 25 with some of the things Venka's mentioned around where venture capital was and a lot of the uncertainty. But as far as digital goes, we've seen, you know, lots of activity and a lot of very positive things happening. Um, one of the big trends for us internally has been how much more we have been using AI in our product development life cycle. And, we're about right now from where we were this time last year, we're about 1.5 times more efficient. And we're seeing that increasing in what we're doing, right? Just everything from code creation to testing assists to requirement syntax to kind of, better coverage of regulatory gaps potentially when you're dealing with releasing software in a whole bunch of different jurisdictions. Keeping track of that for people is really hard, and having AI to help you sort of catch those gaps earlier has been really really valuable for us. I think the negative side of it is if you look at things like the FDA's use of ELSA, I think is something where now here again they're using AI in what they are doing, and I think that's great. The same kind of thing, covering gaps, being able to sort of get more out with of the people that they have. But we've seen this with a number of companies where questions that weren't necessarily being asked before are now being asked in pre-sub meetings and in as part of the submission process. I think good because to some extent, but I think it's been shocking to some companies where that was never asked before because the people they were dealing with in a particular center may not have done sort of been fully aware of all of those aspects, especially around digital things, around cybersecurity, and around AI. ELSA, I think, has really put more of an emphasis on that because it's really pulling from the breadth of the regulations and the guidance and other things that have already happened within the FDA. So I think that's one of the big trends that we've seen in many industries, but we're seeing it everywhere where people are using more AI in what they're doing, which sometimes has unintended consequences. And I expect we'll see some really good things come out of that, and definitely some head scratching things out of that as well, because the use of AI in what we do as an industry and as regulators isn't really mature yet, and and probably won't be for a number of years.
Yeah, Randy, if I could just add two things on Bernhard's points. With regards to the tempo and access programs, I think I do commend and I will corroborate that an emphasis on early diagnosis and prevention is now at least at pilot stage and ideally will become part of policy. If you think back to 10 years ago when digital health was in Gen 1, that was really the promise of what digital was supposed to do. It was supposed to decentralize some care, open up more access to people that probably aren't seeing a physician or a healthcare provider as regularly as folks like you and I do, and reach it when a point where we are phenotypically look outwardly normal and healthy, but there's something going on that will manifest in a decade or two to something that becomes irreversible. So pre-diabetes, pre-hypertension, early sleep apneic sort of silent diagnosis, I think, is going to be paramount for us to address a $750 billion problem, which is cardiovascular disease and diabetes and the combination of those two. I mean, 93% of us have a cardiometabolic anomaly that we're aware of. That's 14 out of 15 of us, or 230 million adult Americans. And Mike knows, there's 100 million pre-diabetics every year, with 10% of them converting over to type 2 on an annual basis. And that's going to keep going. So with the tools that companies like us have and a distribution and potential payment method to really start proving quantifiable outcomes, really could unlock what the promise of digital was kind of supposed to do, which was curb the costs, because it can provide more access that is sort of less costly, but more direct from an actionable data-driven insight. And we hope to be a part of those discussions with the administration and part of the pilots going forward. And then the second thing, I would just corroborate the AI on product design and development. While we probably don't build it fully into our established quality management systems and be able to show traceability because it's still very new, I think idea inception with AI for product design is very helpful. Can get a lot of different concepts and ideas in a faster amount of time. And this isn't just small companies like us. I can tell you large cap companies that are either our public partners or partners that we can't yet disclose yet. We know for a fact that they're using in our space in healthcare and regulated healthcare, whether it's from the virtual care side all the way down to actual devices. There is a lot of AI being utilized on these teams. Teams are just becoming leaner and getting a lot of product concept out to sort of pre-alpha or alpha stage much faster than you would have seen a traditional company. So I just wanted to say those two things. I'd love Mike's opinion on how AI is being utilized either internally or externally as well.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Venk. I think that what we're seeing, and we've been early adopters, I think, at Gluco of this, is number one, how do you use AI to speed product to market, to speed iterations to market? How do you grow the company without growing the middle of the income statement? And it's just being more efficient. I think that AI is showing us early stage that there's opportunity there. You don't take the human out of the equation, though, but perhaps you can get the same amount of work or more work done with two people, and you don't have to add that third person to a team, is what we're finding. So we've adopted it early, and we see the early stage good that it's doing. We're also seeing the early stage problems that it creates, and it is creating some problems as well. I think the second part of it is, how do you use AI to interact with the patient. So our product interacts directly with the patient. So whether that's how do you onboard the patient to your product, perhaps using some kind of generative AI, so that you don't have a call center staffed with 30, 40 people. We're in 22 different languages. Do I hire 22 different uh, native speakers, or can I use AI to kind of help with that process? So there's a lot of people rushing into the space. Not all of them are going to make it. Some have good ideas. Some are going to have sustainability issues. But we're seeing it already. We're implementing it in our world. I think that it's allowed us to grow as much as we have without having to grow the number of FTEs that we have. So I don't view it necessarily as uh, a tool to reduce headcount, because healthcare by its very definition is a growth business. People want to live longer and people want to be healthy. So as long as people want those two things, there's going to be a reason for us to continue to innovate and to grow. But I do believe that it's going to take some of the cost out of the system, and that's what's exciting, and that's what we're looking forward to. The other thing, the flip side on the customer side at the enterprise level, though, is it's happening so fast that enterprise is starting to put governance in place, and that they're trying to slow it down, and rightfully so, because you're dealing with patient data, you're dealing with patient health and outcomes. So they have governance boards that are coming up that are intentionally slowing things down, making sure they understand what is the impact of AI to our patient population, to the safety and security of our data at the enterprise level. And so that's not surprised that has happened, but it definitely has tapped the brakes on some of the things earlier that we thought were going to happen quickly. And now, the end customer is saying, not so fast. We need to see what's happening with this data, how it's being transmitted, who sees it, et cetera. So early stage, it's exciting though. And I do see that at the end of the day, it's going to create some opportunities for companies that know how to adapt and adopt this new technology.
Randy, could I just steal moderator one more time?
Guys, go for it. Best panel here is I just sit back and listen.
For the audience, I think it's a really important point that Mike brought up with regards to AI and digital tools. You don't know how often we have to have the discussions. Our utilization of AI on our platform, as well as design, is not going to replace doctors or RNs. I think that feels like sales speak when we say it to organizations that use it. Number one, we're not going to replace decision making on data that will then be released to the patient in either Mike's company or mine, because that's part of our rules with FDA, and we're not going to do that, right? We didn't go to med school. We build tools, and we are making that sort of data and information more available, more structured, and more quick, more speedy for that review. So anytime we're utilizing digital tools, there is a bit of an adoption barrier or education that we really have to continually communicate as an industry, that this is not replacing end users, and it won't replace people within our organization. It just helps us get to results and delivery faster. What that means for the end users, an RN or physician, is they're wasting less time, or they're spending less time with physical tools like taking the blood pressure cuff, or listening to your heart or lungs with the stethoscope. If all of that is already there for them when they're doing their consultation, the ability to see 8 patients per day or 10 patients per day in a primary care setting now becomes 15 patients a day. And you're therefore increasing your volume for the same sort of staff, because you have this reliable and in some cases probably more accurate data, because it's being produced sort of passively and delivered digitally. So I just wanted to double click for the audience on that this is not just sales speak when companies like Mike and I talk about this. This is really about optimizing workflow for the end user, as well as accuracy for the patient, and sort of efficiency and compliance for that patient to use these products more frequently and probably as much as they should, because we simply don't see our physicians or get diagnostic readings as often as we probably should.
So
And
I,
I would, sorry, let me go on with that. Right, I think both of the points made there, and the point around kind of um, governance slowing some things down in the enterprise, right? Um, it really, the way we look at all of this is really some of the guidance that the FDA has on software and on tooling and on using risk-based approaches for that, and doing risk management around it absolutely is part of the process. Really doing that analysis, testing something out, having guardrails around it, and then understanding when something is actually doing something or acting as a guide or a hey, you forgot and you missed these things, which can be really both can be really helpful in understanding that and having a process for adopting these things in your life cycle is really important. And I think if governance at an enterprise is tackling those things, then that's good. And if that can be provided as tools for the people that are doing the development, what does the enterprise care about? How can you meet those requirements? Then that will speed back up again. But I think
Yeah.
that'll take a little while.
And just to reiterate to some of that point, we companies like Mike and our like Gluco and Nanoware, we don't want to, nor are we allowed to just institute black boxes that just deliver data without being able to show the traceability, even back to the raw data. I mean, that's a requirement for us as companies that chose to be in regulated healthcare, right? So, and I think that's an also great potentially segue into this convergence between consumer and clinical that I believe is actually firmly here now, with examples of wearables companies partnering and sort of moving from a originally consumer space into 510Ks. That sort of discipline is now going to be or going to need to be adopted by a broader set of players, which is great because once MedTech and tech really sort of converge, that's going to unlock a lot of this access and horizontal ability to reach millions of more patients that are already very familiar with these tools. And some of these programs that we talked about earlier in the webinar are supporting that.
excellent. Let me go a little bit off topic here, but I think this is probably relevant to you guys. 1 year ago, the hype for 2025, which in my opinion is probably proven to be hype, was that GLP-1s were going to just roll like a steam train through medical device, and diabetes was going to go away and weight loss was going to go away, and all of a sudden there'd be a dramatic drop. I don't think we've seen that, but what can we learn from that experience and apply as we hear about trends now that are going to steamroll through MedTech?
I think you're right, Randy. Every one of our investors asked us that question because we make a living off of type 1 and type 2. And they're like, hey, isn't type 2 going to disappear with GLP-1s? And the data has shown that not only has it not disappeared, it really continues on its trajectory. So look, it's great that medicine continues to develop new drugs that help people that need that help. We still have, an aging population in the world, in the developed world especially, we need to figure out how to deal with their chronic conditions. And, as Venk said, reaching the masses, the millions and millions of people versus just the people that can afford $1,000 a month GLP-1 product is more attainable through technology than it will be through super expensive drugs, as we saw, and even the life science companies realize this is not sustainable for us to charge $1,000 a month for a lifestyle. What eventually for a lot of people became a lifestyle drug. So it's great that we have these kind of drugs that are coming out, but I don't know that there is no magic bullet, I guess is what I'm. It's incremental, the steps that we see ourselves taking. We have an issue here in the United States. The biggest issue that we have is we spend too much and we don't get outcomes for the amount of money that we spend. We spend more money than any country on the planet, and our outcomes are not as good as most of the countries in Europe. So introducing more expensive drugs is not going to fix that. What we need to figure out is how do you reach the masses and how do you get them to, adopt better behaviors and better lifestyles? I think companies like ours are the ones who are doing that. What easier way is there to reach the masses than something on your iPhone, something on your watch, something on your computer desktop? Almost everyone has access to those things, but not everyone has access to even healthcare in America, much less really expensive healthcare. So there's opportunities, I think, that we're going to see technology. And I think this access program that Dr. Oz just rolled out last week is really interesting because for the first time, you're seeing the FDA say, you know what, we're going to pay for outcomes and we're not going to pay for activity. So if you have technology that shows that you can reduce hemoglobin A1C or if you can reduce heart failure, we're going to pay for that versus seeing your upload your A1Cs 20 times a month. That we're not going to pay for that if your A1C doesn't go down. And I think that makes perfect sense. And it's going to
And
create
also,
opportunities for companies like us.
and also, Mike, like previously when we would work with the Hill on, FDA to CMS payment pathways where the restriction or something had to be you had to have a breakthrough designation, you had to be specific in a really, really sick patient population or infectious disease. This is kind of the opposite. This is very broad because we've got 200 million plus with these sort of underlying silent chronic conditions that would never have qualified for breakthrough, right? You can't say that hypertension is going to kill everybody and get a breakthrough designation, for example, right? But 80% of us are in a pre-hypertensive state, moving into stage 1 and stage 2 potentially. And I think, Randy, to your point on the GLP-1s, I think they're phenomenal drugs. For any of us to say that we don't know at least 5 to 10 people in our lives that are taking them or have taken them and had great success, we'd all be lying. But I think there's two aspects as to why that's just not going to eliminate type 2. Number one, we are human and it's not just an American thing, but this is also overseas where obesity and type 2 is continuing to grow. But until we have proven that this is more than a lifestyle drug, as Mike said, that this is a 10 to 20 year usage that is permanently changing behaviors, we're not going to be able to see those stats of drop-offs on a quarter-by-quarter basis or an annual-by-annual basis. And more importantly, the people that are taking GLP-1s, guess what? They actually want and need tools like Gluco, like NanoWare, to actually not just see the results visually, but be able to track individualization on their own glycemic control and how that's improving, on their own hypertension and how that's improving, on their own rhythm management and how that's improving. A single dose of a GLP-1, if all 5 of us took it, our metabolic, vascular, hemodynamic, heart and lung systems would all react very differently. And the data-driven insights that companies like Gluco and NanoWare can kind of share and structure with patients is equally important to the success of them potentially spending that $1,000 per month on a treatment to kind of move themselves into from the reversible condition into a more normal condition. So I actually think the GLP-1s are great. I think what the administration is doing and kind of curbing the cost of them is fantastic. And I actually think it will help rise all boats in digital health tools if it becomes more accessible down the road. I think it will be a sort of village of all of these kind of tools together that are going to drive more adoption and more access. And to Mike's point, the goal that we all kind of got into digital health for, which is quantifiable, healthier outcomes.
Let me flip the question. Go ahead, Brendan.
Yeah, I mean, I think, right, if we think about the biggest, if I had a, wet magic wand and I could say, what would be the best thing that could happen, not incrementally, but just as a change that would really, accelerate, um, you know, the benefits of digital ecosystems. And it's really around reimbursement, right? Our reimbursement model has historically not been friendly to that. It has been a great break against that. And anything that happens to shake that up, that is not T-set, M-set, incremental 10 companies that can maybe do something is really what we have to do. Like really changing that model is the has been the biggest break and the biggest barrier for us to do anything. So if I could wave a magic wand, I'm not sure exactly what the reimbursement model should look like, but I think it should be evidence based and it should be based on real world data, not some, uh, perfect clinical trial that actually doesn't actually then translate into real world things. These are good signs moving in that direction, but we have a long way to go there.
Um, we talked in our prior discussion a lot about data. Who owns it? Who gets to use it? And how are we going to leverage it? And what does this mean for med tech companies who probably were not first into the data game, viewing data as gold?
I think we probably share answers on this between Gluco and Nanoware. Our policy is that the data is always the patient's data. And, per terms and conditions, if we're going to be using any of that data for algorithmic um, uh, development, we always need to sort of unblind them and sort of ask for permission there. But I also think that there's a responsibility for companies like us to be, while our data sort of services are closed source, we want to be able to give access to the data, not only to those patients if they want it. Obviously, we have to send, based on our FDA clearances, sometimes patients need to get the data after a physician has reviewed it. So we follow policy in that regard. But I also think for data partnerships, we have a very, very fundamental thesis that we will do two-way data relationships with our data partners. Whatever we sort of take in from a CGM, a continuous glucose monitoring partner, or a blood draw partner, if they want data back on that patient or that population of continuous blood pressure, we want to offer that. I think that's been a new tactic that at least wearables have shown. And again, Aura and Dexcom, I think, was the first sort of meaningful relationship that showed this. But traditional med tech has been very bear huggy with their data. It's my data. I'm not sharing it with anyone. And I think the ability to kind of share with some of these next gen tools is actually is evolving not only the patient, but the consumer into what is possible and understanding about their own health. So I think that's going to be a trend that's here to stay, is OEMs and digital health companies like us sort of doing two-way data relationships. But ultimately the patient is the one that owns the data. We're not allowed to, we don't sell data. We don't monetize data. We will sell and monetize services around that data based on the policies we need to follow, as well as patient consent.
That's spot on. And, it's interesting. This morning, I don't know, Wall Street Journal or somewhere, I was looking at all the lawsuits that Epic is facing. Some of them from manufacturers like ourselves, but almost all of it is around their inaction around allowing access to data that is owned by the patient. Our strategic partners tend to be bear huggy, as Frank said, thinking that the data belongs to them. It always belongs to the patient, and I think that some legislation probably needs to come out, or regulation needs to come out, that reinforces the fact that the data belongs to the patient. And when we have access to de-identified data for clinical studies, from an academic point of view, what a crime if you don't leverage the digital ecosystem to look at data on a macro level, to look at, opportunities for improvement in healthcare. That just, this attitude that I see a lot of the big manufacturers, that there's some monetary component, that there's a gold mine with all of this data. And by the way, I've never seen any of them monetize it successfully. So all they're doing is preventing access to really good clinical trials. And I worked at the worst one of the bunch, which was I worked at Medtronic for 15 years. They had 75 years worth of heartbeats, trillions and trillions of heartbeats. They didn't want to share it with anyone because they thought there was gold in their hills, and never made a penny off of the data because it's really not that easy of a thing, and really prevented a lot of good, I think, clinical trials and some interesting insights into human healthcare by behaving that way. And at the end of the day, it wasn't their heartbeats; it was somebody else's. It was the patient's heartbeat.
Yeah,
I would.
the redundancy of how many EKGs everybody has or blood pressure values, to Mike's point, I've never really understood why that shouldn't be shared.
Yeah.
If the patient consents to it. But we share our data in every other industry voluntarily, right? When we think
Right.
about
Right.
technology and social media and financial technology and all of that, it's so maybe there is an opportunity. We've been saying this on the halls of AdvaMed, which I know Mike and myself and many other companies are not only members of, but take some leadership positions there. Probably time to start talking about updating HIPAA and some of the other privacy related or access related aspects to our current policy around data access. Because I agree with Mike on the EHR stuff, without starting a fight with big companies as a small company here, that that was executed incorrectly, and was executed from a traditional aspect of believing that the data was theirs when it's never been theirs.
Look, sorry, Randy. Yeah, I know you want to ask another question, but
No.
uh, I think one of the things, all right, historically, medical device companies have been about the device, and data has been really exhaust from what they're doing. They haven't. That wasn't their business. That wasn't their value, and a lot of historical practices um, reflect that. I think that waking up to the fact that, oh, we didn't understand this, and now data we need in order to do better with our products, we have to buy from hospitals and physician groups. Certainly was something that we've seen in the industry, and they've woken up to that. And then I think looking at kind of, oh, we can monetize the data by literally selling the data is a really unsophisticated view on the value of data. I think the data, and I think companies are evolving in that, right? As the data is valuable for particular purposes. The data is valuable for running your business, for improving your product, for improving patient outcomes, for improving other aspects for your other stakeholders. If you are thinking about it strategically, then you can generate that value. And then the question is, how do you capture some aspect of the value? It is not typically by just saying, now I have data, here is my data mart, go buy some of my data, right? Companies are, I think, AI, I think, is accelerating some of the, AI doesn't work without data to work on. So there's more emphasis because of the general sort of, let's call it AI hype, to care about data within companies. But some of these other things as well, the more there are trends who really think about outcomes and do think about actually bending some of these curves, the more important data is, whether it's your own data that you could be capturing. And I'm using the term your own data, right? You're right. Patient data is patient data. and it belongs to them. But there's also an aspect of this that there is both a something that is valuable to the companies for various reasons, but also there's a public good aspect of this where, thank your data and Mike, your data is valuable to the world, right? And to us as a society to make improvements, probably beyond the ones you guys are thinking about right now.
Do you, this may sound a little cynical, but do you think there's any chance that we'll end up in a scenario in a couple of years where it's absolutely clear patients own their own data, but it's also absolutely clear that patients sign away rights to use that data like they do for Wi-Fi terms of service? It's just, or like when you click on that European set of cookies that you don't have to accept on every website, when you get these fine-grained choices. I challenge you to do that. Where we basically, yeah, we have the right to it, but basically everybody's gotten used to giving it to everybody,
Yes.
or not knowing that they're giving it to everybody, but doing it.
Yes. But I think it's incumbent upon our industry to not follow suit where there's this accept or reject. And if you want to know why you should do one or the other ones, click on this terms and conditions and read these 50 pages, right? I think we need to establish policy that when a patient is consenting, there's, an outline of three main things that, we can all agree on as an industry. This is being used in a de-identified manner for population health algorithmic builds. We are, for example, and give them an example, right? In the sort of policy, we would like to understand 100,000 patient profiles that are de-identified that have pre-hypertension across the entire country, from rural to suburban to urban, for us to better manage and start individualizing care to you. And then I think the second piece is this is not being sold to anyone, to an advertiser, to a insurance company, or somebody that could look at stats and make determinations from an actuary standpoint and or try to target advertising. I think that's very, very critical, that when we say about, compared to other industries, Randy, when we're asking for use of people's data, what it's for and what it's not for. I think if we can be very clear with that, as opposed to the terms and conditions in other industries, which are actually trying to get you to sign away your data that I can do whatever I want with it. I think if we can kind of take a different path and a sort of more responsible path to that patient, it will be well accepted. But I think the answer is completely yes, that is where this is going to go.
I think we'll see legislation. You're going to see, because there's some bad actors out there, to your point, who want you to just click, click here, and you really can't download whatever app you want until you click it, and you don't realize that you're signing away, your right. I think you're going to see legislation that's going to,
I agree.
deal with that here in the next few years.
But I think, Venk, I know you and others within AdvaMed have really talked about really leading on this, because we're going to see bad things happening outside of the MedTech industry that can wash into the MedTech industry, sort of, oh, you're also using data, therefore it's bad. If we can lead on that as an industry and be ahead of that, and then that, I think, will be good for patients, and it'll also be good for the industry if we do that, because otherwise,
totally. There was a stat I was reading just a week or two ago that the majority of social media ads, like more than 51%, were targeted at 12-year-old to 22-year-olds. Like, we don't want to be that industry, right? We can't be that industry. Our industry is fundamentally built on trust and not addiction to a screen.
Yeah,
that's probably a good place to
close. So we're almost out of time. I want to thank everybody who's hanging with us. I've been incorporating a couple questions along the way, but here's one I'll put in from the audience that I think gets to an interesting tension you guys have all talked about.
We'll have to lightning this, I think, Randy. I've got to jump. Yeah.
Who's going to be the Tesla of MedTech? A company that is hardware, but at its core is really the value proposition is software. Or what can we learn about that right now? Is Tesla for MedTech a good model in mind?
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. You know, there's a lot of ways to look at it. When you look at med tech, you got the big players who continue to get bigger. So you got the Medtronics, the GEs, the Medtronics that keep gobbling up the small players like Nanoware and Luco. So you know, being the oligarch in that or the oligopoly in that space has benefits. They have pretty unlimited access to capital with the public markets. But you know, no one predicted Microsoft. No one predicted Apple. No, I have a feeling that the Tesla may not have even been invented yet of MedTech. You know, so it could be Nanoware. It could be somebody who is working on something in Stanford that comes out 5 years from now. What I do know is this is an exciting time of change. And when you look at the benefits of AI, when you look at the benefits of just social media and what people are finding, the way that we can influence what people do, whether it's for their health benefit or against, whether it's, you know, life science companies coming out with 1 million Dupixent commercials or whatever the case may be, I think we're gonna see that be used in a lot of positive ways in the next 5 or 10 years that we're not seeing right now. So I think that I mean, who would have predicted what Facebook does with their algorithms? I mean, it's kind of shocking that if I'm talking to my wife about my shoulder pain, I suddenly start seeing shoulder braces on Facebook, you know, and I'm like, how is that happening, right? So there's unknown what is about to happen, Randy, but I do think it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be around smart people that have good purpose with what they want to do with society. And out of that, you're going to see some really interesting new players come up. Which one of them becomes Tesla? Who knows? But I think the big guys are always big, although Kodak disappeared, you know, so you never know. Never say never, but I think it's an exciting time.
I would echo that. I think I would say I'm not sure, and I appreciate Mike suggesting that it could be us or uh, that both of our companies should be acquired at some point. But I think I personally think it probably would be a new player if it happened, but I'm also reluctant to say that it will 100% definitively happen. And the reason for that is healthcare traditionally is a siloed industry based on disease state. And that's going to be a challenging thing for somebody to be horizontal and providing even a basic component or just a battery for every single disease state we're talking about. That's very individual. Some are infectious diseases in small populations, some are much bigger. And so I think that inertia will probably take a med tech, quote unquote, Tesla a longer time to emerge. But I think digital making things more horizontal with companies like Luco and Nanoware and more decentralized for patients is probably the first step in establishing that. But it's probably going to happen through consolidation of multiple assets because our industry does take a village, as everyone knows.
Yeah.
I would, so if we think about sort of, okay, Tesla in its industry, in the automotive industry, right? I think while there's lots of regulation in the automotive industry, and there's certainly, different things that are part of that, um, it's not as funky, regulated, multi-sided market with the way MedTech is. So there are barriers in MedTech that are greater than in the automotive sector. But if you look at what Tesla did, they did reimagine what it meant. They didn't necessarily think of themselves purely as another car company, right? They looked at it and they were definitely digital forward, technology, software, et cetera, forward, and really thinking about it differently. and you look at their valuation and how they're valued, they're valued quite differently from a traditional medical device company. At some point, the idea was, oh, Google's going to come in, Microsoft is going to come in, and they're good at technology or they're good at software, and they're just going to do this, right? Various people of the tech giants have tried in fits and starts to get more into this. And, as it stands right now, there have been a lot of try and then cut on that side. I do think it's going to be someone that is technology digitally centric, but also dealing with the big things that we aren't handling well. So it is tackling things earlier. It is tackling these chronic conditions. It's tackling pre-diabetes. It's tracking metabolic disorders. All of those big problems that we are having a really, really hard time handling. There are things that have to get put in place in order for that to happen, right? There's a lot of barriers to that rapid growth, reimbursement, and being able to sort of look at real world data and have policies that allow for that are the big barriers. The more those barriers get reduced, the more likely we are to have someone come into that, right? So if we don't reduce those barriers, we're going to end up with worse and worse healthcare outcomes as we have been seeing. And if we do reduce those, then we will see the Tesla or the Microsoft or the Apple of this space.
It could be a Tesla, or we could end up with a bunch of like Mini Cooper and Rivians.
Guys, I do have to run. I'm really sorry.
Thank you very much.
Guys, and the audience, we'll see you guys in the new year. Looking forward to it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Vink. Appreciate it.
So, Bernard, thanks for bringing that home. I think we're going to wrap with just, we're going to thank our speakers, and also wrap with finishing up our last bad song of the year. So I'm going to play it through again. This is inspired by the song that everybody sings, but nobody knows the lyrics to, right when New Year's hits every year. So I will play this now, and I'm wishing everybody on here a happy and healthy New Year.
Webinar jingle hosted by Orthogonal, feature Vank, Mike Bernhard and Randy. Title: Lessons from 2020 Faye. Plans for 2020 DOR is a medical device. Message from the US and EU. Move faster and break nothing.
With that, we're wishing you all a happy New Year.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.